Tera Talmadge from Pig Trail Nation, and I don't believe that was a coincidence, Tera. Do you?
Hey, you know what? I appreciate the throwback on that one. I love it.
Good. Well, we won't ask you to sing, but
thank you. Yeah, no one wants to hear
when Master Matthew Travis is playing the songs on this show, you just never know what's going to happen. So
I love my themes.
Yeah. So Tera, we've got this affiliation going on here. We've got to get everybody from Pig Trail Nation on halftime at some point. So we had a really good time with Nick last week. Thank you very much for the aid on the name pronunciation for Nick. And now we got to get you on here. So we're the ones with the faces for radio, but now you've got the voice for radio. So thank you so much for coming on.
I'm excited to be on. Thanks for having me.
Let me ask you what you think about the situation with Arkansas defensive football assistant coaching right now. You know, coaches have to head coaches make hires, and that's probably the most important thing that they do. And I think Sam Pittman has done a fantastic job hiring his assistants. So I don't see any reason why, when you're looking at the players that are coming here to play for him right now, that are transferring in from other programs that even won national titles or played from them, that there are going to be some coaches that are knocking down the door to get here too.
Absolutely. So it's not like a, the sky is falling situation and his assistants are dropping like flies or anything. It's interesting for sure, especially with everything that happened with the defensive backs that all kind of got together and decided to transfer. But at the same time, like you mentioned, Sam Pittman's a very good coach, and I think he's hired the right people on that staff, and they all want to be there. And there's plenty of good quality coaches that would love to be on that staff as well. It's just a matter of who he thinks is the best fit. And so I know that there's a couple of guys they're looking at for especially the defensive line job, but nothing's obviously for sure. So we'll just have to wait and see.
What do you think? Not the reasoning for why Jermiah Ashley was let go, but what might have been lacking in what was going on the defensive line for Coach Pittman to think he needs to make that change, because that's the only coach that he's fired.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is recruiting, because we know that Sam Pittman has done that before. He's let coaches go because of their lack of recruiting. And the defensive line was great this past year, but you look at it and about, three of those guys were pretty much all transfers. And so you need to be able to restock and get some good talent in there. And I don't know exactly how that all went down, but again, Sam Pittman has done this in the past, where if you can't bring in and recruit good talent, then you're not a good fit for his staff. So that's probably one of the big factors of why Coach Ashley was let go.
Yeah, and outside of the transfer portal last year and the three big defensive linemen, there really hasn't been that. You got the LSU transfer this year, but outside of the portal, there really hasn't been that big splash at defensive line. So I can definitely see that. And Tera, when it comes to the experience that the coaching staff at Arkansas has, when you just talk about Sam Pittman and Barry Odom, just the years of experience, the different staffs that they've both been on, I think that everybody should have faith that they're going to make the right hire. Do you think that it's going to be somebody that could, somewhat fall under a Barry Odom coaching tree, if there is one? Is it going to be somebody that he's worked with in the past, or do you think it might fall under more of a Sam Pittman previous stop, where Sam goes out and gets his guy and then Barry's kind of have to deal with it?
I'm not sure how that dynamic works between the two of them. I feel like Sam Pittman has a lot of trust, obviously, in Barry Odom, and whoever he wants to bring in is probably going to be the ones that they really take seriously. But at the same time, it's Sam Pittman's staff at the end of the day. So I'm sure that he has the final word. I have heard from our Otis Kirk that they're looking at a guy who's a Missouri assistant, or former Missouri assistant, Brick Haley, for that defensive line job. So there's your Barry Odom kind of tie-in right there. But I'm not sure. I'm sure that they're looking at a bunch of different guys right now. I would say that probably Barry Odom is the one really looking into who he wants on his defensive staff.
Yeah. Before we get into basketball, because obviously that's one of the biggest stories going on around the natural state, do have one last football question. Not a lot of people knew about it. It was obviously scheduled. KJ Jefferson's knee surgery. Is he going to be 100% ready to go by spring practice, or is this something that he's not going to be close to 100 until summer practice type of thing?
Well, so the main thing is that it didn't sound like it was a very serious surgery. It's a big deal, obviously, because it's your knee. And he is a dual threat quarterback, so that throws you off for sure. I would hope that he is 100% by spring. I'm not entirely sure, but at the same time, the big thing is that we didn't really know how bad this was. And he played all season on pretty much a bum knee. And it's crazy to think about the performances that he was able to pull off when he wasn't 100%. So just thinking about another year under Kendall Briles, another year of development in this coaching staff and this system, and then you add in the fact that he's going to be 100% healthy, that's got to be so exciting for that staff and that team and fans.
You mentioned staff. Offensive staff has stuck together. There can't be a coincidence here. And the idea that that's the side of the ball right now that you have probably a little more confidence in moving forward just because you know who is coming back. Admittedly, losing Traylon Burks is huge. But you feel like Jaden Hasselwood can at least step into that number one receiver role and be a real number one receiver. In the defense, there's a little more questions right now, and so that's where the only openings are on the staff. To me, this kind of works out. It feels right.
Yeah, I agree. You look at that offensive side of the ball, and like you mentioned, you've got new talent coming in at receiver, which is exciting. You've got some good quality tight ends. You've got a good quarterback. You've got a running backs group that is pretty stacked. You've got an offensive line that's been working together for a while. You got some guys coming back as well. And so there's a lot of good things on that side of the ball. And also, you haven't lost any staff members on that side either. And so when you have the defensive side where you have a lot of DBs that are gone. Your defensive line is pretty much gone. A lot of your linebackers are gone. There's a lot of questions as to who's going to fill those shoes. I think one of the biggest surprises for me was Andrew Parker leaving. So there's a lot of question marks because it's great that you got Bumper Pool back. That's a win for the defensive side of the ball. It's great you get Jalen Cattle on back. But then what? So there's a lot to figure out over the summer.
Yeah, there is. But luckily, we're sitting here at January 25th and not August 25th and trying to figure out these same questions. There's plenty of time, plenty of discussion to be had, not only by the coaching staff, but us talking heads and fan bases alike. One thing that is happening right now, Arkansas basketball on the 4-game win streak, and I think it isn't a coincidence that it's kind of coincided with the rise of play for Jalen Williams. And in your opinion right now, who do you think is more valuable to the team? Is it J.D. Notae or is it Jalen Williams? Because as he's played better, the Razorbacks have been better.
That's so hard because I really think they're both so crucial to this team. Like, you sit both of those guys on the bench, and it just dramatically changes things. Honestly, it's kind of scary how dramatically it changes things. But at the same time, I probably have to go with Jalen Williams because he can help you big time on both ends. And the fact that he's putting up a lot of double-doubles recently and he's helping defensively, obviously he's known for pretty much taking all those charges. He's just such a playmaker for this team. And he's so consistent right now that it would be hard for me to think of someone being more important to this team.
What it feels to me, and I think JD is a great scorer, but there's a little bit of an out-of-control feel sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. Shot selection, that kind of thing. What you feel from Jalen always is a calmness. He always looks calm. Like, there are moments he's going to get fired up, and we see him exhort the crowd and all that kind of stuff. But he exudes a calmness, and I don't think you can overstate that.
No, I completely agree. And I get what you're saying about Note as well. I mean, it is great that he is a pretty consistent guy for Arkansas, and he's one of the top scorers. I mean, he's the top scorer in the SEC. But that out-of-controlness, I think, it's part of the whole point guard issue with this team. It's been something that I feel like has been a topic of conversation since the very beginning of the season. They tried to figure out who's going to be their point guard, and you have 3 or 4 guys that are not exactly like great ball handlers. So you get some of that out of controlness when you do that. So that's something they've been trying to work through, I think. And the good thing for this team is that they're hitting their stride. I think it took them a while to get going, but they're finally learning how to play together and what their style is. Like, what's your identity? Because for the longest time, we just didn't know. And I don't think they knew either was the issue. So I think it's getting on the up and up for this team.
And you talk about the up and up and how the guys are starting to come together and play together. And it feels like Muss has decided on the 7 guys that he's going forward. Do you think there's room out there on the court for KK Robinson, for Jackson Robinson, for Connor Vanover, heck, for even Chris Likes? I mean, he played 10 minutes on Saturday, but a lot of that was when JD Note went out, and I think he had the lowest plus minus of anybody left. Is there room on the court for those guys, or if we see them, that means something bad has really happened?
Oh, it's hard. It's like obviously there's not enough room for all of them. I'll just go ahead and say that. There's not enough. I do think that certain players that you've mentioned do add something to the game. Like being able to throw Chris Likes in there every now and then is not a bad thing. He had a bad game, clearly, but I don't think that he's a bad player for this team. You mentioned Connor Vanover. I mean, he's barely gotten into the game. Like, I don't really know what's going on there, but I mean, he's 7 foot whatever, so it's hard to be really bad. It's just there's a lot of guys that have talent on this team, and it's hard when you bring in so many transfers that are clearly talented and experienced, because you have guys that are now just sitting on the bench. Like Jackson Robinson had a couple of really good games early on in the season, and then we haven't seen him very much. So that's not to say he's not going to get in the game, but I do think it's going to take a very specific situation to give him another big shot like he's had in the past.
Yeah, I think so too. Tara, we're up against it, so we'll leave it there.
BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile wagering to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE to get started. That's BLEAV. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.